Captain Elian Ward stood in the center of a grand, glowing hall that seemed to stretch forever into the sky. The walls shimmered like liquid glass, and rows of alien faces stared down from every level. He was the only human there. One man surrounded by hundreds of beings from worlds he had only read about in reports. Every eye was fixed on him, not with curiosity, but with judgment. His heart pounded, but he stood straight, refusing to show fear. The Galactic Council was known as the most powerful gathering in the universe. It decided the laws that ruled dozens of galaxies, and now those same judges had gathered to decide his fate. Elian had come here once as a guest, a representative from Earth. Now he was a prisoner. The main judge, a tall figure made of crystal and light, spoke in a voice that seemed to echo through Elian's bones. "Captain Elian Ward of Earth," it said, "you are accused of interfering with a developing planet's natural order. You altered the fate of an entire civilization without the Council's permission. How do you plead?" Elian's mouth was dry. He looked up at the rows of counselors, creatures with wings, glowing eyes, scales, and soft silver skin. Some had no faces at all, only shifting clouds of energy. He wanted to tell them that he hadn't meant to break their rules, that he had only tried to save lives. But he knew that to them, reasons didn't matter. They believed in order, not emotion. "I did what I thought was right," he said firmly. "The people on that planet were dying. I couldn't just stand there and watch." A low murmur rippled through the chamber. One of the judges, a creature with a voice like thunder, leaned forward. "You knew the law. Non-interference is absolute. A single act like yours can change the path of an entire species." "I know the law," Elian answered, "but I also know what it means to be human. When I saw children gasping for air, when I saw the sky turning red with poison, I couldn't walk away. No law should stop someone from saving another life." The counselors exchanged glances. To them, emotion was dangerous. They valued logic above all things. They could not understand why a man would risk his life and career for strangers. To them, that was recklessness, not bravery. The main judge raised its glowing hand, and the light in the room dimmed. "You admit your actions," it said. "You admit altering the natural course of a species. This council will now decide your fate." Guards moved closer, tall beings of metal and shadow. Their armor reflected Elian's pale face. He knew what came next. Termination. It was a cold word for what they planned, to erase him completely as if he had never existed. The thought made his chest tighten, but he didn't move. He stood tall, remembering the faces of those he had saved, the alien children clutching their mothers, the way the red clouds had cleared when his ship released the purifier gas. He remembered their cries of relief. That was worth any punishment. One of the guards whispered to another, their strange language echoing softly. Elian couldn't understand the words, but he caught their tone, final, cold, certain. He had seen it before in military courts back on Earth. Once the verdict was announced, there would be no appeal, no second chance. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. Maybe this is how it ends, he thought. At least I did something that mattered. But then something unexpected happened. The silence in the room broke, not with the judge's voice, but with a sound unlike anything else. A cry, a desperate human-like voice shouting from the edge of the chamber. Elian turned. The guards froze. Everyone's attention shifted toward the back entrance where a young alien woman pushed past the guards. Her skin shimmered with turquoise light, and her silver hair fell in waves over her shoulders. She looked terrified, but her eyes burned with determination. "Don't kill him," she shouted, her voice trembling but strong. "Don't kill my husband!" The entire chamber gasped. The echo of her words seemed to hang in the air like thunder. Counselors leaned forward. The guards hesitated. The main judge's crystal body flickered as if unsure what it had just heard. Elian's heart stopped. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Syrah?" he whispered. He hadn't seen her since the rescue months ago. He thought she had stayed on her planet, safe with her people. How had she even come here? Syrah ran forward, tears glimmering in her bright eyes. "You can't take him from me," she cried. "He saved us. He saved our children, our people. I will not let you destroy him." The guard stepped back, unsure of what to do. No one in the council's long history had ever seen something like this. A woman from another world declaring love for a human, right in the council chamber. Interspecies unions were forbidden. The law was clear. Yet here she stood, fearless before the galaxy's most powerful rulers. Elian felt his throat tighten. He wanted to speak, to tell her to go before they punished her too, but his voice wouldn't come. The judges began to whisper among themselves. Some looked angry, others shocked. The main judge's voice returned, colder now. This cannot be. You claim this human is your husband? Sierra lifted her chin. Yes, she said without hesitation. He is my husband and he is innocent. The room erupted into a storm of voices, protests, disbelief, outrage. Elian could barely think. All he knew was that she was here, risking everything for him. He had once saved her life. Now she was trying to save his. As the guards surrounded her, she reached out, her hand trembling. Elian, she whispered. You told me that love was stronger than fear. Now it's my turn to prove it. And in that single moment, the fate of one man, and perhaps the laws of the entire galaxy, began to change. The council chamber was in complete shock. No one had ever seen anything like this before. The young alien woman stood in the center of the glowing floor, breathing heavily, her turquoise skin shining softly under the bright lights. Her silver hair framed her face as she looked straight at the council, unafraid, determined, and ready to fight for the man she loved. Elian could barely move. His mind raced as he watched her, still trying to understand how she had found her way here. The Galactic Council was a place no outsider could enter without strict permission. Yet somehow she had broken through barriers that even starship captains feared to cross. That alone told him how much she cared. The guards surrounded her, uncertain what to do. One of them lifted a glowing staff. This chamber is restricted, the guard said firmly. No civilian may interrupt council proceedings. Sierra ignored the warning. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but filled with strength. Then punish me, she said. But I will not stay silent while you destroy an innocent man. He is my husband, and he saved my people when no one else would. Her words echoed through the massive hall. Even the walls seemed to hum with her courage. Some of the judges looked uncomfortable, glancing at each other, unsure how to respond. No one dared to speak. The silence stretched longer and longer until the main judge, the tall being of crystal and light, finally spoke. Identify yourself, it said in a calm, ringing voice. What world do you come from, and by what right do you claim this man? I am Sierra of Althara, she replied, lifting her chin proudly. My world was dying when this man came. Our skies were red, our rivers were poison. The air itself was turning to fire. We called out to the stars for help, but no one came, no one except him. Elian felt his throat tighten as she spoke. Her voice carried both pain and gratitude. He remembered that day clearly. The distress signals had come from a small planet near a trade route. The galactic regulations had said observe only, but he couldn't obey. He had seen too much suffering. So he had gone down to the surface himself, risking his ship and his life. Sierra continued, turning slowly so every council member could hear her. When the storm came, it destroyed half our cities. The mining machines had cracked the ground open, and the gas beneath it spread through our air. We were choking. Even our strongest warriors fell. And then, she paused, her voice trembling as the memory returned. He came through the storm in a metal ship that burned like a sun. He carried my brother out of the smoke with his own hands. He gave us air to breathe. Without him, we would all be gone. The room was completely silent now. Even the guards had lowered their weapons. Elian's eyes met hers. He remembered that moment too. The storm ripping across the horizon, his ship alarm screaming, the poisonous gas seeping into every crack of his armor. He had seen her there, trying to shield a child from the wind. He had pulled her to safety just as the ground split open. He hadn't known her name then. He hadn't expected to ever see her again. But now here she was, standing before the most powerful beings in the galaxy fighting for him. One of the counselors leaned forward. Its face was like smoke, its voice like wind. You claim a bond with this human, yet such unions are forbidden. The law states that no being of Althara may join with another species. Sierra turned to face the speaker. Then your law is wrong, she said simply. I did not plan this. I did not seek it. But he became part of my life when he risked his for mine. When someone saves you, when they give you hope when everything is lost, your heart does not ask what species they are. It only remembers their kindness. Her words carried a quiet truth that touched even the coldest hearts in the chamber. A few of the counselors looked down as if ashamed, but others shook their heads, unwilling to bend the ancient laws. The main judge's light flickered softly. Even if his actions were meant to help, they disrupted the balance of a developing world. That cannot be ignored. Compassion does not erase consequence. Sierra looked at Elian then, her eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. You call it interference, she said. But what he did was mercy. He gave us a chance to live. Without him, there would be no Althera left for your council to protect. Her voice grew stronger with every word. If saving lives is a crime, then I am guilty too. Because I stood by him. I helped him gather the children. I helped him build the filters that cleaned our air. I will not let him stand alone. Elian felt something stir inside him, hope, maybe, or disbelief. He had faced soldiers, storms, and death itself, but nothing had ever moved him the way her courage did now. She was fighting for him in a place where one wrong word could mean execution. One of the younger counselors, a being covered in soft blue feathers, leaned forward. You risk punishment by speaking here, it said gently. You understand that, do you not? Sierra nodded. I do. But I also understand that silence would mean letting injustice win. I cannot watch an innocent man die for doing good. For a long time, no one spoke. The council chamber seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the main judge said, The council will consider your testimony. The human's execution is delayed until further review. The guard stepped back. The glowing barriers around Elian faded slightly, though he was still under guard. Sierra moved toward him. She hesitated for only a moment, then reached out. He met her halfway, their hands brushing through the faint light of the energy field. I told you not to come, he whispered. I couldn't stay away, she answered softly. You saved my world. Now let me try to save you. The guard separated them, but that moment her hand against his was enough. It gave Elian the strength he had almost lost. As the council dismissed for recess, the hall began to empty, filled with murmurs and confused voices. Some saw Sierra as a rebel. Others saw her as a symbol of something new, a sign that compassion could cross even the stars. Elian stood quietly, his heart heavy, yet filled with strange warmth. For the first time since his trial began, he felt something stronger than fear. It was not hope alone. It was love, pure, steady, and unbroken, shining through the darkness of a place where mercy was almost forgotten. And somewhere deep in the glowing hall of the council, some of those who had come to condemn him began to wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, this human was not a criminal at all. The next day, the great Galactic Council gathered again. The chamber glowed brighter than before, and every seat was filled. Word had spread across the stars about the young alien woman who had stopped an execution by shouting her love for a human. Reporters from distant systems waited outside, and for the first time the council allowed a session to be recorded for the archives. What was supposed to be a simple punishment had now become a question that could change the laws of the galaxy. Elian stood in the center of the glowing floor once again. But this time, something was different. He no longer looked alone. Sierra stood nearby, guarded but unafraid. She had been allowed to stay, though the council had warned her not to speak unless asked. Still, everyone in the chamber knew she would find her voice if she had to. The main judge's crystal body shimmered as it spoke. The council has reviewed the human's actions and the testimony of Sierra of Althara. However, questions remain. Did Captain Ward save lives? Or did he cause greater harm by breaking the law of non-interference? Elian took a deep breath. If I may speak, he said. The judge nodded once and Elian stepped forward. You call it interference, he began, but I call it survival. The people of Althara were dying because of a mining disaster caused by the Galactic Trade Guild. Toxic gas had filled their atmosphere. The Trade Guild abandoned the site and left the people to suffer. I found them by accident while on patrol. Their distress signals were weak. When I saw what was happening, I had a choice, to watch them die or to act. He paused, his voice steady but full of emotion. I used my ship's purification system to clear the poison clouds. It wasn't much, but it gave them time to recover. I didn't change their nature or their destiny. I just gave them a chance to live. A low murmur filled the room. One of the counselors, a being with silver eyes and thin wings, leaned forward. Do you have proof of this claim? That the guild caused the disaster? Elian turned toward Sierra. She nodded and pressed a small device in her hand. A hologram appeared in the air, a projection of the red, dying sky of Althara. The crowd gasped as they saw the footage. Children running through thick clouds of gas, the land cracked and burning, the air alive with sparks of poison. Then the image changed, showing Elian's ship descending through the storm, releasing streams of blue mist that pushed back the red haze. The view was shaky, filmed through tears and smoke, but the meaning was clear. Sierra's voice trembled as she explained. These recordings were taken from our communication towers. The Trade Guild's machines cracked the ground open to extract minerals. They ignored warnings from our scientists. When the gas escaped, they fled. Captain Ward stayed. He didn't come for power or profit. He came because he couldn't leave us behind. The room was silent again, but this time the silence was heavy with thought, not judgment. Even the main judge tilted its glowing head, its light dimming as it processed the new truth. Another counselor, older and colder, spoke up. The law exists to protect balance, it said. Even good intentions can destroy that balance. What if other humans follow his example? What if every species begins interfering, each believing they are saving lives? Elian looked up at the counselor. Then teach them compassion with wisdom, he said. Teach them how to help without harm, but don't punish the act of saving lives. If we choose fear over kindness, then what kind of galaxy are we building? The council chamber filled with whispers again. Some members nodded slowly. Others frowned. The idea of changing the law terrified them. It was ancient, unbroken for thousands of years. But there was something in Elian's voice that made them pause. It wasn't rebellion. It was sincerity. Then, to everyone's surprise, one of the counselors rose from its seat. It was an elder being made of translucent mist, known for always siding with the law, but now its tone was softer. I remember, it said slowly, when the first humans joined the council as observers. We called them reckless dreamers. But perhaps we forgot that dreamers are the reason any of us survive. Maybe this man's actions remind us that mercy is not weakness. The chamber grew still again. The main judge looked at Elian, then at Sierra. You have brought forth evidence and testimony, it said. The council must now decide whether your actions were crime or compassion. Until then, you will remain in custody, but under observation, not punishment. The guards stepped forward, but Elian noticed that they no longer gripped their weapons tightly. Even they seemed to sense that something had shifted. As he was led to the side chamber, Sierra called out softly, Elian. He turned, and she gave him a faint smile. Whatever they decide, I don't regret a single moment. He nodded. Neither do I. Later, while the council debated, Sierra sat alone in a quiet hall made of glass and light. Outside the windows, stars drifted like dust in the void. She held the small hollow device in her hands, replaying the moment when Elian had landed on her world. His voice echoed through the static. I can't fix everything, but I can help. Those simple words had changed her world. Back in the main chamber, the debate continued. Some counselors argued that Elian must be punished to keep order. Others said that his compassion had revealed a flaw in the system, a rule that had lost its heart. The Galactic Trade Guild's representative grew nervous as their name was mentioned. Their secret negligence was out, and they tried to deny the evidence. But the recordings didn't lie. The truth had finally come to light. Hours passed. The chamber glowed dimly as the final vote approached. When Elian was brought back, the counselors looked tired but thoughtful. The main judge stood again, its light flickering like a sunrise. Captain Elian Ward, it said, this council acknowledges that your actions were not born of greed, nor intended to disrupt order. The evidence shows that you acted to save innocent lives after others caused their suffering. The Trade Guild will face its own judgment. However, your case remains complex. The law may need to change, but it cannot be rewritten in one day. Elian bowed his head. He didn't need freedom. He just needed them to understand. Then the judge added softly, until that time, your sentence is suspended. You will remain within the council's watch, but not imprisoned. The council will continue its review. Relief washed through Elian. It wasn't victory, but it was hope. He looked toward Sierra. Her eyes met his, and she smiled faintly through tears. As they were escorted away, Elian whispered, maybe they're starting to see the truth. Sierra nodded. Truth has a way of shining through, just like you did when you came through our storm. Outside, the stars gleamed brighter than ever, as if listening. The galaxy was still full of laws and boundaries, but now, one small spark of compassion had begun to challenge them. The trial was not over, but for the first time the council had opened its heart to something new. A human's kindness and an alien woman's love that dared to defy silence. The next morning, the Galactic Council's chamber was filled again. The glow of the Great Hall seemed softer this time. as if the light itself was tired from the endless debates. Every member of the council knew that this hearing was no longer just about one man or one act. It was about what kind of future their galaxy wanted to have. Elian stood quietly in the center, the energy barrier around him now faint and almost invisible. Sira was allowed to stand near the front row, though guarded by two tall sentinels made of metal and light. She looked calm, but her hands were clasped tightly together. Every word spoken today could decide Elian's fate. The main judge, the being of crystal and light, rose once more. Its voice echoed through the chamber like a bell. "This council has heard arguments from both sides," it began. "Now we must face a question that has not been asked for centuries. Should compassion outweigh the written law?" The question hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. Some councilors shifted uneasily, while others leaned forward curious. An elder from the trade guild stood first, his robe shimmering with gold. His voice was smooth but cold. "If we allow emotion to rule, then chaos will follow," he said. "The law of non-interference keeps balance in our universe. If one act of mercy is forgiven, others will claim the same excuse. Soon no planet will evolve on its own. This man must face consequence." Sira's eyes darkened, but she stayed silent. Then a younger counselor, one with silver wings that shimmered faintly, spoke in response. "But is balance more important than life itself?" she asked softly. "The law was made to protect civilizations, not to watch them die in silence. What kind of balance is it if we let innocent beings perish just to keep a rule unbroken?" A wave of murmurs moved through the crowd. The debate had begun again. One side spoke of order and tradition. The other side spoke of compassion and change. Elian listened quietly. He had already said all he could. Now he could only hope that truth would reach those who still had hearts open enough to hear it. After a while, the main judge turned toward him. "Captain Ward," it said, "you have heard the debate. What do you have to say before this council delivers its judgment?" Elian took a deep breath. His voice was calm but steady, every word filled with meaning. "I am not here to break your laws. I am here because I could not close my eyes while others suffered. I didn't come to play hero. I didn't come to prove humanity's worth. I came because I saw life fading and I knew I could help." He looked around the room, his eyes meeting those of the counselors. "You call me reckless. Maybe I am. But if saving lives is a crime, then I'll accept your judgment. I would rather be condemned for kindness than praised for standing aside." His words echoed softly across the chamber. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Sira stepped forward before the guards could stop her. Her voice broke through the silence like a clear note of music. "He saved us because he saw us as people, not as numbers in your laws," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "He didn't ask who we were or if we were worth saving. He didn't wait for permission. He just acted, and because of that I stand here today. My people live. Our children breathe clean air again." She looked directly at the judges. "If you punish him for that, then what message do you send to the galaxy? That mercy is a mistake? That love and courage are crimes?" Her words reached every corner of the hall. Even the hardest counselors couldn't hide the flicker of doubt in their eyes. One of the oldest beings in the chamber, who had been silent until now, rose slowly from its seat. Its form was like flowing water, glowing faintly blue. "When I was young," it said, "we believed that laws were made to keep peace. But peace without compassion is emptiness. Perhaps we have forgotten that the heart must guide the mind." The hall fell silent again. Even the main judge did not interrupt. The being continued, its voice gentle and wise. "Captain Ward did not act for glory.
He acted for life.
If we cannot honor such courage, then perhaps it is not he who stands on trial, but us." Those words struck deeply. The counselors began whispering again, this time not in anger but in reflection. Sira turned to look at Elian, her eyes shining with emotion. "You see?" she whispered. "They are beginning to understand." Elian nodded slightly, though he said nothing. He didn't want to hope too much, but inside he felt a small spark returning to life. The main judge finally stood once more, its crystal body gleaming with soft light. "This hearing is not only about law," it said. "It is about the future we wish to shape. Do we remain bound by rules written for a different age, or do we evolve as life itself evolves?" Then the judge looked directly at Sira. "You risked your life to defend him. Tell us, Sira Valthara, do you believe this union between human and alien can teach our world something greater?" Sira hesitated only for a moment before answering. "Yes," she said. because love is not limited by form or origin. When two beings care for each other, they find understanding, and understanding is the foundation of peace. Her answer spread through the hall like light. Some nodded. Others sat deep in thought. It was clear that something was changing, slowly but surely. The debate continued for hours. The counselors argued, questioned, and considered. The voices grew softer as night approached, and finally the main judge lifted its hand. "Enough," it said. "The time has come to decide." Elian felt Sira's gaze on him. He smiled faintly as if to say, "Whatever happens, thank you." As the chamber lights dimmed, each counselor placed their hand over the glowing table before them. The crystals on their seats shimmered one by one as they cast their votes. The silence was heavy. No one dared to move. When the last crystal dimmed, the main judge turned toward Elian. "This council has reached its conclusion," it said, its voice softer now. "The law stands, but so does mercy. The human's actions, while unlawful, were driven by compassion, not malice. We must choose not between punishment and freedom, but between fear and growth." It paused as if weighing its next words carefully. "The final decision will be announced tomorrow." The guards escorted Elian and Sira from the hall. They didn't speak for a while as they walked down the long corridor of glass and light. Then quietly Sira said, "No matter what they decide, they've already changed." "I can see it in their eyes," Elian nodded. "Maybe they're beginning to understand that laws alone can't save anyone." They stopped near a wide window overlooking the endless stars. The galaxy shimmered in silence. Elian looked at it, feeling a strange peace. "Whatever happens next," he said softly, "we did what we had to do." Sira smiled and slipped her hand into his. "And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough." The stars outside seemed to flicker brighter, as if the universe itself was listening and waiting for the dawn of something new. The next day arrived quietly, though everyone in the Galactic Council could feel the weight of it in the air. The great chamber, usually filled with chatter and light, was hushed as the counselors took their seats. Outside, a sea of reporters and citizens from dozens of worlds waited, their eyes fixed on the glowing tower where a single decision would shape the galaxy's future. Elian Ward stood in the center again. The glowing field that once trapped him was gone now. He was still under guard, but there were no chains, no weapons pointed at him. Around him, the air felt different, less like judgment, more like waiting. He looked calm, though inside his heart beat fast. Every word the council spoke today could decide whether he would walk free or be erased from existence. Across the hall, Sira stood near the front, her hands clasped tightly against her chest. She hadn't slept all night. She had prayed, hoped, and whispered to the stars that they would see the truth in Elian's heart. Her turquoise skin shimmered softly under the morning light as she watched the counselors rise one by one. The main judge, the being of crystal and light, stood at the center. Its body glowed like a living star. The sound of its voice carried across the entire hall, calm and powerful. "Captain Elian Ward of Earth," it said, "this council has reached its final decision. We have heard the testimony of Sira of Althara. We have seen the truth of your actions, and we have debated the meaning of law and mercy through the long night." Elian stood tall, his eyes steady. "I am ready to hear your decision," he said simply. The main judge raised its hand and the light in the hall dimmed. "For centuries," it continued, "the law of non-interference has stood to protect life's natural course. But today we must ask ourselves, does the law still serve that purpose, or has it become a wall that separates compassion from justice?" The crowd murmured softly. Sira's heart pounded in her chest. "Captain Ward," the judge said, "this council acknowledges that you acted in defiance of our laws. However, the evidence proves that your actions were not done in greed or malice. They were acts of mercy, of courage, and of love. The Galactic Council hereby overturns your sentence." The chamber erupted into sound. Gasps, cheers, and even a few tears filled the air. Some counselors clapped softly, others looked stunned. Sira covered her mouth, unable to hold back her emotion. The judge continued, "You will not be punished. Instead, your case will become the foundation for a new agreement among the stars, an amendment to our ancient law. From this day forward, mercy will no longer be forbidden. The act of saving life, when done without harm or domination, will be protected under the code of compassion." The room went silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. one filled with awe. It was the sound of history being made. Sierra's tears began to fall freely now, shining like small drops of light. Elian turned to her, his heart heavy with relief. For the first time since his trial began, he could truly breathe again. The judge turned its crystal face toward Sierra. "Sierra of Althara," it said, "you have risked much to speak truth to this council. Your courage has reminded us of what it means to care beyond boundaries. For this you are hereby granted honorary citizenship of Earth and recognition across all member worlds." The crowd broke into applause. Even the guards, who had stood silent through every hearing, lowered their heads respectfully. Sierra looked toward Elian, her eyes glowing with pride. "You're free," she whispered softly, almost as if she couldn't believe it herself. Elian stepped forward, the last of the light barriers fading around him. "Not just me," he said quietly. "You freed us all. You showed them what love can do," the judge nodded. "Your union," it said, "will stand as a symbol of unity between species. Let the galaxy remember this day, the day compassion triumphed over fear." After the session ended, Elian and Sierra walked out together. The corridor outside the chamber was filled with the hum of voices and flashing lights from reporters. But when they stepped onto the high balcony overlooking the city of lights, the noise faded into a distant hum. The sky above shimmered with stars and ships, and for a moment, it felt as if the whole universe was holding its breath. Sierra leaned on the railing beside him. "I didn't think they would listen," she said softly. "Not to me. Not to someone from a world they barely noticed." Elian smiled gently. "Sometimes it just takes one voice to remind people of what matters." He turned toward her. "And yours was stronger than any law they ever made." She laughed softly, wiping a tear from her cheek. "You know," she said, "my people will sing about this for centuries. The man who came through the red storm and gave us back our sky." Elian shook his head. "If they sing, let them sing about hope. Not about me." They stood together in silence, watching the sunrise spread golden light across the shining towers of the city. Ships moved through the clouds like silver birds, and somewhere in the distance a new star blinked into life. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to change. The Council's new code of compassion spread across star systems. Missions were sent not just to study distant worlds, but to help those in need. The Trade Guild was forced to rebuild the planet it had damaged under strict watch. And on Althara, the air grew clear again. Children played under blue skies, and their elders spoke of the human who defied the stars to save them. Elian and Sierra became symbols of hope, not because they wanted fame, but because their story reminded everyone that kindness was stronger than fear. They continued their work together, traveling between Earth and Althara to share technology, culture, and learning. Many others followed in their footsteps, humans, aliens, and travelers from worlds that had once distrusted each other. One evening, years later, Elian stood again by the same balcony where his fate had once been decided. The stars shimmered above him. Sierra joined him, her eyes reflecting the lights of 1,000 worlds. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked softly. "Every time I see a star," he replied. "That was the day I stopped believing that we were alone." Sierra smiled. "Because you found me?" He laughed gently. "Because I found something greater than rules and orders. I found a reason to keep believing in goodness." She rested her head on his shoulder. For a long time they stood there together, watching the endless sky. Far away, the Council's tower still glowed like a beacon. What once was a place of judgment had become a place of hope. And though many years would pass, the story of that one cry, "Don't kill my husband," would never be forgotten. It became a legend told across the galaxies, a reminder that love and courage could change even the coldest hearts. In time, people no longer called Elian a lawbreaker. They called him something else, the Star Saver. The man who taught the Council that compassion was not a weakness but the strongest force in the universe. And beside him, Sierra remained, the woman whose voice reached across the stars and saved not only her husband, but the soul of the galaxy itself.